Greetings. I know you can hear my voice and probably see my screen. Just bear with me. I'm pulling up some stuff currently right now. Where is it at? Not delayed gratification. Is this it? Yeah. Okay. Oh shit. Dang, why is this thing taking so long? Slide over. Greetings, how y'all doing out there in the world? Greetings. How y'all doing? Greetings. I need to wipe this off. Feel like it's clean enough. Anywho, greetings, peace, greetings to all. Let me position myself. Let me get this started. That's perfect right there. Greetings. Let's give honor to the source of the creator, to the Most High for making this possible. This is going to be a very heartfelt, heart expansion, very significant thing that we're going to be talking about here. I currently have one of the books that I'm in process of writing, a letter from a man with mother wounds. This is very significant because did I say it already? Yeah. Honor to Source, Most High, Ancestors, no. Yeah. So anyway, let me dive right into this. The topic at hand, if you have been following me or new to the channel or to this experience, this video, a lot of things that I speak about has a lot to do with, coming back home to ourselves and on the healing journey, spiritual journey, whatever journey you're on, when you're dealing with, say, childhood traumas, adult traumas, or experiences where you're trying to navigate the world, learn your lessons, and so forth. Coming back home to me symbolizes the fact of like restructuring, rebuilding your belief systems around life, your belief systems around integrity, authenticity, truth, your truth, and coming back home to those very uncomfortable memories and so forth. So you're seeing here something that I'm gonna scroll down because I don't want to reveal too much too soon. But honestly, like, I'm bringing y'all into my world when it comes to the fact of like, this is raw and uncut, like authentic. Words are probably misspelled, who cares? But raw and authentic, like creativity that I channel and come from my experience and I write it. This can be very graphic for a lot of people. So if you're very sensitive, because I'm going to be talking on the subject of my experiences with my sexual trauma and sexual abuse. And the topic, I got insight on this because of a video I've done, or a video that I came across via Instagram, and trying to recall that it was speaking about how a lot of men are and have been abused and they don't know it. And I was like, whoa. So the reason I talk about this now, and I probably, you know what, should I download that now or what? I should. But no, because I have this on here, so I have to do it this way. But I was considering doing another recording on another app, but I probably will. But anywho, but I love the screencast, even though eventually I'm gonna get a mic. But if the audio is very challenging for you to hear, I would advise like probably turning it up, turning your volume up, or also caption probably would be the best option. Other than that, be somewhere where you kind of like is silent, or not so much noise around if it's challenging for you, because this is something that is very adamant and very important, very vital in these times where I highlight things around wellness, your inner world. When I say come back home to yourself, it's more highlighting your inner world and how we're restructuring through my previous videos talking about the greatest wealth transfer upon us, which is not just physical, tangible things, but the intangible, the unseen, the spiritual, the emotional, the metaphysical, the things that are the unseen to the natural eye, but are also a part of energetic transferency, or that's a word. Anyway, but other than that, so again, a lot of this, so a lot of this I'm diving into and bringing y'all up to speed about like my current, what I'm giving birth to right now, like creative wise. I would have never thought 35 years that I would be speaking on such things. I would have never. I know I was going to be an empowering speaker, and not something like what you deem as a motivational speaker. That's completely different. What I'm doing is empowering you to realize that your power comes from within. So empowering you to acknowledge that your power is within, but it also is lying dormant in a very suppressed and repressed emotions, the childhood experiences, the adult traumas, the things that we have pushed away or brushed it aside, ancestral trauma, intergenerational trauma, things that upon this great shift right now, feeling like can seem like we're in between two worlds, the push and pull, the breaking away and liberating to do something completely new and pioneering that. As you can see what I'm doing now, like the courage it takes. If you've been following me previous videos talking about how a lot of us as millenniums, dealing with the digitizing of the data and shifting things from usually being a one-on-one setting, but now having to create a whole narrative, a whole life around a whole different atmosphere, economically, demographically, and so forth, that goes on and on. So that right there in itself, the courage I have to pioneer this shit, to like literally, like I said, I've always knew that I was going to be, or I am and knew to be a universal speaker, meaning on all levels. So the things that I speak of is not just from a level of just physical, it's spiritual, from childhood before you get into adulthood. But being that we've been in this tornado, it's almost like this drastic shift and change in atmosphere, spiritually, physically, and so forth, economically, politically, so forth, you name it, that can be very gut-wrenching, or even like confusing when you're coming from a culture or a generation who are very confused, or in a confused state to where they look more externally more than internally for security. And so with that, it's like accepting that role, going through that character development from your childhood development stage to seeing what is authentic, what is truly supportive, what is genuine, what is integrity, what is morals, what is principles, and so forth and so forth, and the peeling back of fucking layers like an onion to like get up and just to have confidence, to reassure yourself, to have self-assurance and self-confidence. And this has been a process, because as I talk about these things, as you're seeing right here, it's like it takes a lot of courage to where there isn't an opportunity for me to sit down with the mother when I talk about these things. There isn't an opportunity to sit down with, let's say, people from previous relationships where a lot of damage could have been done, whether on my part or their part. But at this evolution or this stage in my life, I care more about my well-being to protect my peace and not look forward to more a chaotic experience, but more of a harmonious and balanced experience where this brings me more joy through the experience and creating, and to expand on it rather than tolerate or be tolerated where I'm not appreciated or celebrated. So I bring my gifts and experiences here for and accepting that once it's here, it's no longer belongs to me. So it's again when I say empowering speaker or universal empowering speaker, if I want to add that title, again, it's to empower us to take back our power from said circumstances or situations where we felt disempowered, where we felt silenced, where we felt devalued, where we felt that the foundations were not as solid until now we're unraveling. Everything's been revealed as we unpack that which is ancestral, that which is no longer ours, or that which our mother and father never chose to acknowledge. So here we are. And me diving into this, it's again my own language of things. So when I say I'm pioneering it, this is how I'm writing it. It comes from me and so forth. So I'm letting you into my world where this book is going to be something so monumental, but I'm actually reading it because some people don't read books and some people do, and there's more to come, audio books and so forth. I say. So this is going to be, can be very graphic. It's not showing my, okay, there we go. It's going to be graphic in a way of like very detailed, so it can be very sensitive for some. And it's so authentic because it's like, I feel younger kids should know about this because of the awareness around how we have lived in an over-sexualized society and not like focus on the sacred part about it, and how a lot of us have been in climates where our innocence was stripped when that's all we had. And what I see living out today is this is what people are unconsciously trying to regain subconsciously. Did I say that correctly? Yeah. Well, unconsciously trying to gain consciously, but also that it's embedded in their subconscious, like the fears and so forth. And I'll get into more detail about that. But other than that, yeah, this is something that will be very touching because it's very personal for me. And like again, I tell y'all, the healing journey, as you gradually learn about more about life, I start to realize like, yo, oh my gosh, this is coming up. I'm finally attending therapy. Like something that, again, I've said before, is very taboo. I'm looking for my chapstick because I know I'm finna to go in. You know what I'm saying? So, where that chapstick at? Oh my gosh, I may not have none in here. But anywho, oh yes, God, I knew something told me. So yeah, peach. That's good. So yeah, like I said, I knew I was going to be a great speaker. I was told young that, you know, through others' perspective or their own limitations, oh, you're going to be a pastor, a preacher, or you should do this, you should do that. And I realized like a lot of that was a part of their narrative and their world or their own mindset. I can say closed-mindedness, but that can be very harsh to some people, but their experience more so like how they feel just because of their belief system I should be in that religious atmosphere or realm of things, which again I incorporate those things because I came through it and from it, but start to dig more deeper into how it was used as a tool, how it was used to abuse mindset or even psychologically manipulate the masses and or people. But that's not the subject at hand. I always knew that my voice vibrationally or just the power it had or has will have a ripple effect, and through that I could not look for acceptance from the world, because in pioneering something and speaking up for something or some things that are more greater than just on a grander scale, more greater than just from my experience, but how it affects others, and also on a deeper emotional, spiritual level, how they too can face these very things and not evade or passively aggressively like move on, passive aggressive like continue to push it aside and not be authentic and not be honest with self. And again, so coming back home to that, it's coming back home to self and realizing like it's me that I'm looking for, it's me that I'm seeking. And even through the versions of people, I'm recognizing like, wow, I had to experience this. So now, outside of where a world where we usually be so focused on the monetary, not that it doesn't have significance, but the more importance of the balance between not losing myself in the money and the idea and the false identity and the false empowerment and so forth. So where do I start here? So again, going back to the subject at hand, when I came across a video of how a sister was just saying like how a lot of men, modern day men, have been sexually abused or molested or been abused, and they're just looping through patterns and they don't even know. And I've said this before, how consciously that can be so dangerous, because when you look at the masses, or when you look at majority of people, they're unaware of what they're doing. They're unaware of how their actions or awareness of things has an effect on other people. And with that, again, we're coming from generations of people who have grown up in environments or have been groomed to believe and take on belief systems where they don't really have so much of compassion, and have developed a belief system of being passive aggressive towards the importance of their well-being and the well-being of the generations after them. And with that, this is where a lot of their generations, you see a lot of substance abuse, escapism through substance abuse, escapism through sex, escapism through so many things. I can go on and on. If you want to dive more deep into that, you can learn more about exactly what escapism is and how it's used. But again, the powers that ain't, or used to be, the force or even the energy towards not prioritizing the well-being or building upon a medical system, again, that doesn't prioritize the well-being emotionally, mentally, spiritually of self and the masses and so forth. So you're recognizing a system or economic system and so forth collectively around, from the baby boomers and so forth, that are collapsing within on itself and crumbling right before us. So a lot of what I'm speaking about has a lot to do with what was the untold stories, or never, a lot of men don't have the courage to speak about, because of the narrative around and the stigma around how, from generations, how men are supposed to just keep working, keep overextending, keep sacrificing yourself, your well-being for a family, gain as much as materialism as possible for stability. And that's from farming, that's from abuse of power, that's from career in all sectors, in all corporations and businesses, sports and so forth. It goes on and on. Capitalism, all of it. So that being said, that affects and has had an effect on our mothers, the matriarchal, who gives birth, who's enabling through their belief system of what a false empowered patriarchal has given them continuously and even unconsciously, that they have been enabling. And then some who intentionally support it because it's all they know. So again, it's like a double-edged sword, because you will have the grandparents, great-grandparents that fight you tooth and nail on what their belief system is, and anything outside of that has a lot to do with ego, or wounded ego, or even limiting themselves to not have more experiences outside of religion, outside of the workspace, career, and so forth, because of what they have so much attached themselves to, the worldly aspect of the worldly idealism, or worldly idolizing of just what they only know to be, or their reality and so forth. So where could I start on here? Let me jump right into this, because I'm telling you, I go deep. Let me see. So again, in this dialogue, I'm speaking to women, but I'm also speaking about my experience. So when I say I speak on all levels, it's like first, what do they call it? First, third person? I don't know. Again, it's just in my own unique way. So when I say I and we, I'm in this dialogue. I'm asking women, from as a man that represents the patriarchal. I cannot. Well, I ain't gonna say I cannot, because can comes before the T, but it's more so like speaking from those men and ancestors who didn't have the opportunity to do this, who didn't have the opportunity to have the space, the safe space to write, to bring y'all into our world logically and emotionally. I'm bringing you into my world emotionally. And being that what has transpired, I had to accept that this is my safe haven. I have to accept that I cannot care about the acceptance of some women, not all, but recognizing the wounded women who will deflect and attack through and from their experiences. And some who will and are in tune, who will become aware, like, it can be like a light bulb moment for them, like, wow, I didn't think men felt this way, or I didn't know that men had this on their heart. Yes, we do. It's just generationally due to our experiences and the perspectives and the belief systems of others that we've taken on, whether consciously or unconsciously, or even intergenerationally. It also ties to the fact of what we have experienced through childhood development in the wombs of our mothers and so forth. So again, when I say I speak as a representation of men, I speak for the men who even unconsciously are aware of what they're doing, but I also speak for the men who are aware, who don't have the courage. I speak for a representation of men collectively who don't know how to apologize because they were never taught. I also speak for the young boys for the men who were once young boys, and for the young boys who were once babies. All of it's connected. So again, I'm speaking from a level of the fact of we were given or assigned this it's almost like this role, and some of us were assigned responsibilities so young that we didn't know how to love you. We didn't know how to hold space to love ourselves. So when you're asking us of so many things, and being that we've been groomed or tried to be taught that we have to give you materialistically, when you're not even programmed, or even in your DNA structure, even in your genetic makeup, for women, it has nothing to do, most likely 99.99% has nothing to do with materialism. The reason I say that, from my perspective, is that it begins with you materialistically, because, and what I mean by that is like the spiritual aspect of how man, or a human being or a person is brought into this world, the beauty of the connectedness, or how women and men come together, and then a woman houses the child first, and from the spiritual aspect into the material plane, or into this material world. Your focus, that being said, your focus wouldn't be material first, if that makes sense. That's the misconception. Now, if you have women generationally or intergenerationally that have experienced hardship, that have experienced a lot of dysregulated nervous systems while having said children, or experiencing this, having traumatic experience in the workplace or in their childhood and so forth, or even during their pregnancy, that's where a lot of your programming or subconscious fears, or a lot of your, due to those experiences, can play out and trickle over into your life, into your kids' life and so forth. That makes sense, which we call generational curses. So with that, now you have to ask yourself, if you've been taught or you've been programmed to look more externally, rather than the importance of how the beauty that the mother is the first teacher, as I've always said, and how she shows us the nurturing, the internal identity, the genetic makeup, reflects that first, the feminine aspect of who we are, but how we assert it or show it masculine, in a masculine way, which we all display in our own way. Again, with you being connected to the child naturally first, again, that shows you where your emotions, where the child emotions begin, what you feel, how you think, and so forth. Like, that's how deep it goes on a more, spiritual and ancestral level. So when a man has been removed and so forth, again, this puts you in a disposition, or like positions you somewhere you were not organically supposed to be. Now, being that a lot of our mothers have had to be in these places where they've had to fight for their liberation, their autonomy, or they had to fight for, that's the word I'm looking for, they had to fight for basically everything that, again, when we talk about the innocence that has been stripped from them during a part, whether hundreds of years or eons ago, or, being that, again, things beginning matriarchally, there's something that has to come into play where the patriarchal overrid or was overriding, or physically, in a way, did created chaos to where, from my perspective, you see that if there's no unity with our women, there can be no unity in community. There can be no when you look at communion, when you look at unity, there can be no, when you take the unity out of communion, then you just have people who are communing with each other, but there's no unity, there's no you and I in that. So when you, again, have the displacement of certain men and certain demographics, now you create an imbalance emotionally, spiritually, mentally, physically. So when it happened physically, then that trickled down to a woman's mental state that made her become more masculine. Her distorted masculinity, her masculinity became wounded, and then that trickled down to her femininity. Her femininity became wounded. So now this confusing state to where now she has developed, you see women develop a father wound. And so with that father wound, and then you having a mother wound with that, now there's a confusion around your identity, how you show up. Because if you're not able to show up and there's safety in how you show up, and you don't feel safe, and there's not environments, communities, there's not economics, there's not a structure to where it makes women feel safe, not even make them, but they're in a safe place within themselves, then that trickles and has effect on everyone. The women that give birth to the children, the women that gives life to everything, and so forth. So with that, now you're seeing the imbalance in how she shows up. So where she feels unsafe, she will show it through her wounded masculinity. Because if she's not safe and protected, then that will be displayed, as you see, on all levels in the world, beginning with the family structure, beginning with the tribe, beginning with the roots, the feminine aspect of the roots beginning with the woman. Again. So, again, the matriarchal aspect of that, when you have a distorted mother, or you have a distorted masculinity, the patriarchal that is displayed today, that does not honor and respect and uphold and uplift a woman in a magnificent way, in an honorable way, and so forth, then you see, like for myself, a man who will speak about this, or a man who will walk in this, and that's even through learning from a distorted woman, or a woman who was wounded, and how I took on things, and through my imperfections of trying to not so much be perfect, but to be balanced to why it is certain things were not prospering or progressing as I should, because it was learned behavior. If most women realize that a lot of their belief system, whether religiously, whether spiritually, whether mentally, emotionally, and so forth, that if I can get them to realize that it was learned behavior, then you'll realize the importance of not just individuality, but the beauty of being yourself. And so what we have happen is that through my storytelling and through my experiences, I'm speaking from a place of where everything began from the matriarchal, and then how I display myself as a representation of the patriarchal. So when I say some modern day women have not had an experience of a healthy or consistent man, a healthy or consistent woman or women, that right there, unconsciously or consciously, brings awareness to how they show up, how they develop passive aggressive behaviors, how they will silence whatever their demographics is, how a mother and daughter could have been, or a daughter could have been silenced into her adulthood, where now she is in relationships or in career settings and so forth that keeps her silent. How she's in amongst religion, how she don't realize how a lot of it was to keep her silent, keep her displaced, keep her in a position where she only serves the family but not serves her purpose. Keeps her in a more pushes her to the side but never really getting the respect and honor that she deserves as her man elevates into this material plane. Because behind every strong man, or behind every powerful man, there's a powerful woman. Whatever you give a woman, she gives you. She multiplies and so forth. And that's not just women, it's the daughters. The daughters reclaiming her power. And that's simply because of being the breakdown of energy. How, in order for our women to be empowered, they have to empower the little girl. They have to see empowerment in the little girl. That first, again, the misconception is that us modern day women and women that did not have the opportunity, like the mothers and grandmothers that had to go work, the grandmothers that had to go do things that they did not want to do. So they became, and again, I've always said that y'all women now have the opportunity with the crumbling society to face the very person that they've been running from. And it's not your mothers, it's not anybody else. That's a part of it, because through them traumatic experience, or through whatever experience it is, you still develop whether a false identity to come back home to the true identity of yourself. And that true identity is what was stripped from you when you were young, your innocence. How can you regain that? And the only way we can regain and be empowered as women and men is to realize that when we look at our children, when we look at the generations to come, they are a representation of, they embody power. Their innocence is their power. Their imagination is their power. But when you have systems that have created so much of not just wounded women, but a wounded society, they see false empowerment in devaluing others, discrediting others, stepping on others to get to where they're at, abusing others financially, mentally, emotionally, and so forth. But the divine always knew that in essence, your essence is to protect it. That's what this has always been about. It's about protecting your essence. And so as you take back your power through from whatever learned behavior, childhood development, our women must know the importance of your childhood came before your adulthood. I don't care if you have 5, 6, 10 kids. It doesn't matter. I still see the little girl in you that now you're in your adulthood and motherhood. You lost yourself in so much of who you thought you were supposed to be, and develop this identity. It's false empowerment to not even want to have fun. You have generations where so many of the women were so traumatic or so had a dysregulated nervous system. You're coming from generations that do not prioritize having fun. Some of them don't even know what fun is. Because a lot of you are on the tail end, and this is why I recognize, like, even the substance abuse and so forth, and the club environments and all this stuff, all of those things was to keep people not just so much at a low vibrational state, but keep y'all from literally having fun. What is fun? And once you channel that innocence, once you sit here, like I challenge you to go back to your childhood and find fun. Because for some of us, it's very difficult. But I guarantee you, for some of you, there's a glimpse of something. I don't care if you went out to the woods and played with ladybugs. I don't care if you dressed up. That's fun. Guess what you're doing now? Guess what you think fashion is? You're dressing up as a little girl right into your adulthood. It's the same shit. It's just how things have been distorted. Things have been twisted just to manipulate people, and how, to these systems and corporations in place is, when I say it preyed on your childhood wounding, it used it to almost take away from your innocence, which is your essence, and put it into this corrupted fashion industry, music, and so forth. Some of you was singing so young, and it was never intended for you to be a part of industries that suck you dry. I know a lot of artists, I know a lot of people this happening to, and they don't actually think that you can opt out or get away from certain things. Yes, you can, because there is no such thing as selling your soul. Your soul can be bought. Listen, you can't buy energy. You can't even destroy it. So in essence, your essence, there is no limitations, darling. You can always come back home to yourself. And that's coming back home to the God, or coming back home to the source. We all are like little children on the playground right now. We all like a little children in this world. And the thing is that some people get so consumed by the darkness of what they've experienced, whether traumatically, spiritually, and so forth, that they actually believe their belief system. Something has convinced them that they cannot come out of that, and that's bullshit. Because you're talking to a person, as I read what I'm about to read, who actually write about what they've experienced, just to denounce that spirit of sexual abuse or traumas or Jezebel or succubus, just to realize, like, listen, I don't have to rid myself of the things that through my character development, like, I don't have to feel shame and guilt around that. There's a lot of you that are at this place, a lot of you that watch me on so many different platforms, in a way, and what I mean, not so many different platforms, but levels of people who are coming to this awareness that the light that you created, the millions, the billions for some of you that you even made, and once you start to connect your essence and that inner child, and to realize, like, the entity attachments, the spiritual warfare you went through, just to realize everything that you gained, it wasn't in vain. But you're coming to that self-realization, like, there was never no love in it. There was never, even how you were being used and abused through whatever corporation, business, industry, and so forth. You were realizing that the bigger picture now was bigger than the money, bigger than what you could obtain materialistically. Because a lot of us don't realize that these generations, we're liberating the generations that come not only before us, but after us. Because it's okay to be in the dark, as long as you realize that that light was there. You were the light for your generation and your lineage. Everyone has an opportunity to turn things around and to change their perspective. But of course, depending on where you are, most people aren't willing. Most people aren't willing to let go of the versions that they have obtained here earthly, like the status, because they worked so hard, and that working hard has gotten into a place of, like, unfulfillment, or never truly holding on to that essence and that innocence and that imagination. And this is what you see with a lot of things in industry, or what's been portrayed, to where they want to do the very things, the powers that ain't, or used to be wanted to do the very things to your kids, what was done to you, to your kids. That's why you're going to see a lot of mass, I don't like to use the term awakening, but awareness around the fact of who's truly been a bridge, the rainbow bridge as we call it, like the rainbow bridge of the essence, the innocence, the hues, who's truly been a bridge to our kids generationally, for them to live in a world that's more harmonious, authentic, with integrity and so forth. And that's where you will realize how you pay attention to who these fucking characters are in your world. I don't care from your mother all the way to in your career settings and so forth. You'll be able to recognize the energy. So for a lot of you, I know a lot of you watch, if you want to use the term celebrities or whatever, again, it's just a term and so forth. All that egotistical stuff, we don't do that over here, because you still are just as human as somebody else, or you still is just as they're just as valuable as you are. So we're not creating no division over here and using those titles and shit like that, because the oneness of all this has a lot to do with the fact of the beauty and how everyone's journey unfolds in divine timing. So I've said before in videos, like how some people will come to their spiritual awareness, or whatever you want to call it, later on in life. Some people won't. Some people will miss the mark, and some may say like, do this shit again or reincarnate. But anywho, let me get into this right here though. So as I was speaking before about how bringing you into the perspective of the awareness of like collectively the energy individually, but like individually my experience, but collectively like what a lot of our, let's say my father, I'm just using this as an example, my father, his father, or my grandfather, my mother's father, or other men who didn't have the opportunity to speak about when it came to this topic of like abuse or sexual abuse, emotional and so forth. And so I'm just reading from the book that I'm currently writing, which is titled I forgot the title of it. A Letter from a Man with Mother Wounds. So let's see here. So again, I'm speaking as if like, I'm talking to the women of like bringing into the world of the words that, or conversation, like as if I'm sitting across from my mother, things I couldn't say, or sitting across, or things I've just said to myself, or now I'm just speaking to everyone. So it says we, as in men, so grant us grace, as, I don't know, see, it's some typos in here. I guess I meant to say, as I stand in the crossfire of generational turmoil, intentionally as a representation of the false empowered patriarchal. And this is the accountability. When I say I stand in the crossfire of generational turmoil intentionally as a representation of the false empowered patriarchal, who, due to my unawareness of my karmic behavior patterns, that has tried to diminish every part of the creation of the woman. Now I want y'all to pause and read that, because the beauty of that is like, this is where we were not consciously aware of. I don't care what pantheon, I don't care what religion, I don't care what people come from. All shall be exposed, even when it comes to whatever leader who probably just leading men to be in more of a false empowerment, but never truly giving authenticity or being honest with women. Because again, I told y'all with Venus, women are ruled by honesty and attention. I have to find the other one. Truth is honesty, but it is something else. So again, and the reason I say that is because I want to bring awareness to y'all realizing like what you've been giving your attention to, what you've been enabling, what you've been feeding, and how that monster has grown. So as I stand in the crossfire of generational turmoil, intentionally as a representation of the false empowered patriarchal, who, due to my unawareness of my karmic behavior patterns, that has tried to diminish every part of the creation of the woman, unconsciously holding on to the distorted feminine that give birth and enable the wounded masculinity displayed on this physical plane through my actions. We don't know how to love you correctly. I didn't know how to love myself. We as most men have fooled ourselves to create a norm around disempowering the very thing that fuels our life, our existence, our lineages, our source of comfort, home, and security, and the greatest reminder of purity, love, and transformation. That would be our daughters, our mothers, and women. As in like the created systems from men who drain the life force from the source of all living organism and species. When I say created systems, basically like present day. From a man who has faced and still currently navigating the waters of his mother wounds, most of men are still drowning or lost at sea, suffocating from the safety blanket their mother pretending. And the reason I say most men, because as much as they don't want to acknowledge it, whether unconsciously or aware, whether even through this how they built their structures and so forth, some of them will never acknowledge the fact that they're literally drowning in this idea of what they deem as power. And so when I say most men are still drowning or lost at sea, suffocating from safety blanket, their mother pretending, what I mean by that is that some of them come from wounded women to where they don't even recognize how wounded they are as men. And so you have mothers who pretended to love them, to give them this safety blanket. And as I continue, it says, pretending to give them, but left them abandoned and out in the cold, emotionally, spiritually, and physically. So again, I've said before, you're dealing with men who, yes, they can have a certain status or be materially well off, but on the level of emotional intelligence, spiritual wealth, what of substance do they really have if they don't have those very things? And I'll continue. Leaving most men who have aged into their adulthood, masking behind their career status, carrying emotional discord connected to their emotional cord developed in the womb and through childhood from their mother, grandmother, or matriarchal figure. Most of us men dealt with homes on a tight schedule of abuse before and after school, not to mention being bullied in school. This right here really stuck out for me because I remember vividly like my experience of being the fear of avoiding going home. When I sit there and say there was no love there, it's not to say your mother didn't love you, but when I say due to the fact of how women can, not all, but women or people can be so wounded that they cannot wait to take out their frustrations because you're the first target. So when I've talked about how women can be in relationships where they can smother the son and be an enmeshment or even emotional incessive, and this can go both ways with men and women, fathers and daughters, that they don't realize how much they've harmed or caused internal damage emotionally, spiritually, that it plays out externally as that child, through their childhood development to their adulthood stage, how they become the very monster that the parent was. And from experience, this is why I take so much like emphasis and dedication towards my own therapy, my own therapeutic aspect of expressing myself through my arts, through my creation. It's because, bro, I've seen the monster that my mother was and people in my family, to where I can acknowledge and say I became the very thing I didn't want to be. But now I realize not to have shame and guilt in that. I know a lot of that hit y'all when I said that. How sometimes the very thing you didn't want to become, you end up doing. And this is how we realize, like, learn behavior, because I didn't realize what being passive aggressive was. I didn't know much about woundedness or internal wounds or being internally damaged from being emotionally abandoned, emotionally neglected, and so forth. So now that I'm recognizing it, I have to ask myself, do I want to be, and it's not even trying to be a hero in my children's life or be a hero in someone else's life. No, I don't want that role. The role that I've accepted is that I'm okay with being a super villain. And what I mean by that is like, almost like knowing that there's a polarity to life. Like, knowing that I have went through things, but I don't have to ignore it. So I've had to show my kids a side of me that at a moment I wasn't even aware, and that's how dangerous unconsciously that we can do things, and how dangerous you can become, and have the effects on hurting people. And that's what passive aggression is. It's like the unresolved emotions around what you went through in childhood. So when I'm writing this, I was like, oh my gosh, like, bro, I had a mother who pretended to just because she offered shelter, she pretended or were masked in public or to people, even when she couldn't hide it, even when she hid her substance abuse or addiction. It's like she was hurting more of herself, but then on the tail end of that, bring it home and act like we were the problem. And that's dealing with a grandmother, same thing with religion, developing this false identity and never acknowledging what's going on within them. So the bullying wasn't just at school, it would be in other places. And it's wild because the shit like hits you and you be like, whoa. So continuing on, when I say I had a tight schedule, a lot of y'all don't even realize you're dealing with men who had, when I say a tight schedule, that's like emphasis on the fact of like that, like it was that consistent. The abuse was that consistent. You just knew you was finna get your ass whooped for nothing. You just knew you was finna get cussed out. You just knew something was finna happen. It was like walking on eggshells. My partner loves to use that statement, like walking on eggshells, even in your own home where it's supposed to be a sense of safety. So that's why when I speak about a dysregulated nervous system or chronic nervous system, you're dealing with men that have been in society where they were abused by multiple people, and then they walk around in life don't even realizing it, don't even know. That shit is wild. So continuing here, child developmental stage consists of watering and maintaining. Hold on, this goes together. Hold on. Most of us men dealt with homes with a tight schedule of abuse before and after school, not to mention being bullied in school. Childhood development stages consists of watering and maintaining a foundation of a dysregulated nervous system or PTSD. So we never got to rest our mind, body, and spirit. So becoming narcissistic was as easy as 1, 2, 3. Simply because we witness fear-based relationships consistently. I'm probably need to put consistently. And this is deep. Simply because we witness fear-based relationships consistently. Meaning that a lot of our relations was not built, when I say upon love and authenticity and honesty, it was not built. That was the opposite of what a lot of us were given. So I told my partner the other day, I'm like, bro, you know how challenging it is to just like, I was like, yo, how could I give my daughter an honest relationship, or how could I give her like a relationship that I never given myself? How could I give you, I'm talking to her, like, how could I give you something I've never given myself? And it like hits you like a ton of bricks, because it's like, bro, what am I doing? How did I get here? And once you realize like that right there is a cycle being broken, or you liberating yourself, because we've known people who will stay into things or they master so much of. We have generations prior to us who have mastered manipulation. They're master manipulators. They're master narcissists. And they don't even know it. When you're teaching people to go to work and do this, and you're teaching them to not prioritize their well-being, you're teaching them you're instilling in them to be passive aggressive to how they truly feel. And so you're building a system and society around people who are waiting to explode. And whatever is imploding within them, you're teaching them again to push it down even more through their day-to-day routine, even through their work environments. Oh my gosh, bro. Because then what? Then it falls back on them. Then what? Where they're gonna live? Y'all don't realize a lot of this shit systematically was set up to crumble. It was just a matter of time. So let me continue. Simply because we witness fear-based relationships consistently. Oh, hold on. Yeah, consistently, inconsistently, most of our lives. So I want y'all to see that there. When I say a lot of us dealt with the consistency of unhealthy relationships, like seeing the consistent inconsistency of like woundedness, nothing balanced, nothing structured. So it's like right now, one of the most challenging things for me is like showing up for me consistent and watching everything, not just inwardly but outwardly, crumble. And then like the pressure on that to stay in integrity, stay like grounded, stay rooted in my routine, in the uncomfortability of others feeling like I should be doing this, but not intentionally making them, it's like not intentionally making them uncomfortable because how they feel has nothing to do with me, but it's like I don't have no control over that. To be pissed at me or upset because I'm being myself, it's like, whoa. So again, when you're dealing with a lot of men who have fear-based relationships consistently, inconsistently, most of their lives from the lens of wounded men. Because we didn't just say the women, we said it wounded men because listen, it is what it is. Most of those wounded men were the fucking very men who are out on the street, dope dealing, whatever it is. Even the ones in corporate, it's the same stuff. It's just the same energy. It's all a part of the same structure. It just, no matter their demographics, no matter their color, they still were wounded. They still were. They just matched it different. They just wore different outfits. So with that being said, it says the inconsistency simply because we witness fear-based relationships consistently, inconsistently, most of our lives from the lens of wounded men and women, that we dare not correct our behavior patterns later on into adulthood. How dare we correct that? How dare you go to therapy? And a lot of those elders, for depending on their ages and their generation, that's not going to be a thing, y'all. They're not going to therapy. They're not. So that would be the detrimental, like to say, how dare we correct our behavior patterns later on in adulthood? That would be detrimental to the false empowering societal cultural identity fueling our wounded, distorted egos. That's blasphemous to be healthy. How could we? We didn't come from previous generations prioritizing a healthy dialogue. You know how you say something in your head and try to write it and it's not. So we follow instead of truly leading. And this is why I see so much of an emphasis on a lot of men realizing that the society you've been living in, this is why I see so much, and I know it's gonna be what it is. This is why you see athletes and so many people in certain status, they will quickly follow behind a man not knowing nothing about them. This happens with women too, but you see it a lot in men because of ego driven, or like wounded ego, I should say, or wounded inner child. They will follow behind, and this is from experience, from like driving from cousins who were like sell drugs and stuff, but I never did it. But again, it's that external validation or acceptance that a lot of men do. And when you're talking about structures built upon basketball, sports and stuff, I start to look at certain people characters different now, because I'm sitting here like they're very narcissistic, and I can see it from a distance, because how can you not see the narcissism in the structure that created their identity and also their character development through that? And so now you're seeing how a lot of them don't know how to be who they are without, as these foundations crumble. And so I realize that for a lot of them, it's gonna hit them hard to where they're not in the so-called spotlight, but the false empowerment of it. So they're not able to speak to the youth as would someone who has experienced certain things and wondering what is keeping them from doing the same thing. So with that, I see why a lot of men in these what y'all call high places, where I see it as they're very low within, and they're no higher than no one else. This is an equal playing field, and that's the thing that's the balance is showing. Is that again from when you see a lot of characters and what they've displayed, and I'm gonna use the term like people like to say destiny swapping, but in reality, a lot of that is to distract people from walking into their purpose and destiny, because it can never be what they say. It can be a delay, like you have like a car hitting another car, but that's divine intervention. So I'm recognizing things as it could seem as a delay, or construction is going on the road, your life, but at the same moment, no one or nothing here can stop your destiny. So again, going back to how I see certain characters. When I've told y'all one of my videos on my YouTube how earthly rank isn't the same as spiritual rank. Now, with that being said, a lot of us have, as you evolve, realize we'll be called. What they say, few are called, many are called, but few are chosen. And the reason, when I break that down or look at it, I can see how millions can be called. When I say few are chosen, few are, like, we all are chosen, but very few stay afloat, or not even just afloat, but stay the course. Because some people are so consumed by what how they develop their earthly status, and they get consumed by the earthly status, the material status, rather than balancing between the spiritual, what you came here to do, what you assigned to spiritually, like your mission, and you got too consumed in the worldly distractions in a way, if that makes sense. So what I'm saying is, everyone goes through spiritual warfare, but what I'm getting into is that when I say that would be detrimental to the false empowering societal cultural identity fueling our wounded distorted egos, this is speaking to all men and women, but especially a lot of men who represent this patriarchal false empowerment of patriarchal, knowing that it was fueled by the distorted mother or the false mother, the energy of that. They don't want to see your kids prosper. Meaning, like, how could I say this? Like, if they know that there's an up and coming rising, how they say a rising star, let's say in athletics or something, this is where the gatekeeping comes in. You have people who are way makers and gatekeepers in all aspects of like career status and so forth. And what they do is, being that, right now, some they call like the Pluto and Aquarius, is going to illuminate that. It's going to illuminate how and who are really for the children and the mothers, because of the rise of the divine masculine and feminine, or the great mother returning. And you're going to see spiritually, well, physically play out who is for, when you look at Aquarius, it's the humanitarian. So when you look at certain characters that, yes, it may be displayed on an earthly plane, like they are high status, or they're supportive towards a good cause. But this ain't about good and bad. This is about frequency. This is about authenticity. This is about integrity. Integrity is when I'm in this room speaking, but I'm the same person out there. So a lot of people don't realize, like, in the shift where things are being balanced, where the spiritual aspect is returning, you're having a return of those who are spirit. It's always been spirit first. So there's the ones who are highly ranked spiritually, who walk in integrity, who walk upright righteously. This is the shift in power that you're experiencing. And so certain characters represent the opposite of that, meaning that they've gained all this earthly or material things, but there was never no integrity there when it came to themselves and morality and principles, when it came to evolving their lineage. because you don't know what they do in the dark. You don't know what they're operating and so forth. So when I say, like, some of them are not going to come out of where they are because they hold tight so much to what they know to be or perceived as to be righteous or great or amazing. Nah, the ego ain't gonna let them come out. They can, but I'm recognizing like a lot of characters right now, whether if you want to call them celebrities, sports, political, all of them, they don't want to piss off the powers that used to be, or they don't even want to piss off so much of what they've been assigned to do, but outside of that, lose all of what they've gained. And with that can come when they say the devil come to collect or the spirits come to collect, because what y'all think y'all just see on the physical plane, there is things orchestrating behind the scenes spiritually, because that's always been a balance between feminine and masculine principles and energies. So those very things, let's say, that was abused in the women and men and kids, all that collective energy, there's spiritual justice at play, no matter what you see on this physical plane. So no matter how y'all see people play out certain things, listen, there are people who have the opportunity, no matter their status, to do what is righteous. And there's consequences and there's universal law at play to what they put out, they too will receive. And my elder said, like, how you treat people on the way up is how they'll treat you on the way down. So a lot of people, which you can call it a downfall, but in reality we all experience, being at a place, but the reminder is that you're not more valuable to anyone just because you have this earthly status. No, spiritual, energy is the fact that we all are valuable in this grand scheme of things, but the manipulation through the fact of people knowing that they have status and they've been portraying as if they don't want to awake the masses or remind people, and even when they do it, they still can do it through manipulation. But they're slowly, like, it ain't even slowly, like the collapse of, when I say narcissistic templates, things that are collapsing, it's going to be so evident to see the mental health awareness around that person really needing support. And a lot of it is showing us that it doesn't matter their status. They too have to do the shadow work. They too have to do the healing work. They too have to go within and heal whatever's going on with their lineage. Because again, a lot of people, their initiation or their incarnation has a lot to do with what? Them being of their earthly status, but they are not exempt from karma, which is lesson, and they've experienced a dharma path. So let's say someone can come in and be birthed into a wealth or have this ability to be a certain athlete or be a part of a corporation. Okay, so also, if they want to walk upright, they too have to come into this awareness of, like, wow, am I willing to evolve my lineage past this ideology or this false empowerment that they know that goes on in the industry, in the corporations and business, or even in the world? Do I stay in it and collect more karma energetically, or do I liberate myself as well as my lineage? And that's why, again, you can see people, or you will hear about people that you never see at all that have done things, but that doesn't mean that they can only hide. Look, they do things that you will never see this. But at the same moment, the Most High sees all. I could be anywhere right now talking to you. I could be in Australia. I could be in the Bahamas. I could be in, Maldives. I forgot. I could be anywhere in this box. But again, that's the all. The Most High sees all. So the beauty of this is, again, is that we're realizing, like, as things crumble, you're recognizing that the false power that y'all been seeing and so forth has a lot to do with what we all collectively and individually have been enabling. So let me continue with this. The mental illness around disguising ourselves in wolf's clothing to prey on the wounded. So this is my thing. When I say, so we follow instead of truly leading, the mental illness around disguising ourselves in wolf clothing to prey on the wounded. Then you have men still sheep. This is men that still sheep, desperately disguising themselves as wolves. And this is that they dress them, they're like sheep, but stop. Go, like, it's kids, boy. Can you stop? Kids, boy. Whew. I'll be telling you, when you trying to get a message over. Anywho, then you have men, still sheep, desperately disguising themselves as wolves. This is that tough guy mentality. This is that, I know a lot of men been in that sector of, like, you'll have people come in their status and so forth, but they're still, and this is even in the spiritual community, conscious community, whatever you want to call it, on all levels, they know that they can walk upright. They just choose to still be sheep, but they want to portray themselves as wolves. They want to portray themselves as tough, gritty, da 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 da. We know some characters like that in the industry, whether music and so forth. And again, all will be exposed, but all is exposed just for people, you know, that's saying, like, you meet someone in your same town, or let's say music industry or fashion and so forth. Sometimes that person is there to mirror back to you to evolve. Because exposure for me isn't something that, at a point in time when I was at a place of, like, lower level, like, oh, I gotta feel shame because this person blackmail, they're gonna blackmail, they're gonna say this. No, because when I realized I was breaking generational chains and cycles and curses, I realized, like, no, that spirit wanted me to believe like I was not greater than that bullshit ass guilt and shame around me walking at a time in my life. For instance, like, I don't mind sharing stuff from my experience, because it ties into, like, the sexual abuse, to where I question my sexuality. So being in an intimate setting with a man physically, I had people who wanted to say, oh, I'll tell this, I'll expose you, da 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 da. But then there were women who would still want to engage with me. And I had to realize on a deeper level, that was simply because I had to look at it from a lens of, I don't need to feel shame around being myself. I don't need to feel, who cares about how people accept or view me if I was a part of, not even a part of anything, but just whatever my sexual preferences was. And that's where I had to, throughout the years, regain my, not only my dignity, but my self-respect. Because how I disrespected myself is that I would do things for not even just acceptance, but for, like, money. I would do things to feel like I had that, like, from a sense of, you know, validation, or feel a sense of importance from a sexual place, being that I didn't even know anything else to do. And it was from a place of survival. That's what I was getting at. Survival mentality. And so with that, continuing on, that's where I tell people, like, let that be your empowerment. Let that be something that fuels you, because the beauty of that is that was a version of myself that I'm not ashamed of at all. And I can be called whatever, but the beauty of that is that I can even be honest with my experience. And then even if I had to have that talk with my kids, I can be honest that this is what happened with your father in childhood, to where at this stage in his life, he did this, but at the same moment, this is where he is now. You need not to ever feel shame and guilt around the decisions that you made, and not ever beat yourself up because you did not know, or you was at a point where your innocence was stripped from you and it led you down a path or into this dark place to where you had to be reborn, or be reborn through. And in that, you love that part of yourself. I love that version of myself that I went down that path, so I don't have to feel guilty or shame, or even have aggression towards the people that I experienced it with. No matter what they're living out, I just know what I not only deserve, but I want, and what's best for me. And that's what evolution is. So as I continue, then then you have men still sheep desperately disguising themselves as wolves, pretending to be something that they're not. They're not is even more misleading than a wolf in sheep's clothing. Both are misleading because you got one who's pretending to be something, you got one who is something and still pretending to be a sheep. Like hiding their motives, but you got one who intentionally shows their motives. We all know people like that. One of the many things that makes me sick to my stomach as I type this most, because this is getting deep now. One of the many things that makes me sick to my stomach as I type is most of men today have had their innocence stripped by women who preyed on them at young ages, grooming them early to be over sexualized, destroying their inner and outer world. From experience of being exposed to unwanted touches and remarks by my mama's friend at a young age into adulthood, and this is from my personal experience. Comments like, "He's so fine, you lucky he's so young, fuck him if he wasn't so young, I don't care if he is your son." I've had experiences like that on multiple occasions, even if it wasn't like the word being used like elf, but I was in settings where I was like, when I say unwanted touches, this was young, even until like when you do come into your manhood or you do come into your adulthood and you start to age, and some of those women still try to get close to you, and the reason why this is so vital is because I warn women, or I tell women the importance of spiritual discernment, or even women who have not realized, like, as much as you want to push that man, that little boy, into manhood or into adulthood, you're only damaging his psyche, his spiritual and emotional well-being around how not only he viewed women, but when he comes to the awareness of how he wasn't protected by the women in his family, then he will develop an underlying resentment or inner foundation that will be built upon resentment and rage and anger because of what he was exposed to spiritually, what he was exposed to physically, and so forth. And me writing this, at first it was so uncomfortable because a couple of days ago it came up and I was like, oh my gosh, like I was so disgusted because I remember multiple women that my mom knew. When I would come around, it would be like these remarks, and it was so disgusting. And I start to realize, like, my mom never had self-respect for herself, so she didn't really care to have respect and protect me. So how could she? Like, it makes sense to be around women who disrespected themselves and also her. And so yeah, they didn't really respect men, or if they did have men, they were very disrespectful towards them. Again, the father wound. So again, let me continue. Numerous events occurred with multiple women who were friends with my mom. I wondered why my mama never stepped in to protect my innocence as a boy. So I willingly, as I grew, I willingly gave to women, overextending myself emotionally, sexually, and physically without any hesitation. This is what happens with a lot of men. I don't care how much, what his status is, where he's at in sports, his career, and so forth. A lot of men don't have discipline if they grew up in certain demographics where they weren't healthy men. So they don't have discipline towards sexual discipline. They don't have emotional, basically physical, to overextending themselves. Because you have men that, let's say, who not as well off as other men financially, but you see the stigma or this idea around women creating this narrative that a man has to have all of this. And again, due to the generations of coming from material things and gaining so much of material wealth and not prioritizing well-being, they think that matters. And to them, that's not even what a woman's identity is rooted in. But to a man, due to the distortion and the wounded masculinity, he believes or develop a belief system, because most likely if he has a mother wound, he's technically going to develop an unhealthy attachment with this woman who represents a mother energy and be easily manipulated, especially if she has kids, because that's a whole other subject to where those women with kids can be very, not all, but can be very like alluring to men, or seeing a woman that is more mature or represent a more peaceful state can be also very dangerous, because I was telling the elder the other day, a lot of women don't realize, like, you're pullers. You pull in, and when you pull in, then you magnify whatever that is. Men, we push because we're assertive. We push first, like, in a sense of, like, this, like, we carry more, well, being that women have had to carry the load. When you say carry the load, that's basically saying they've had to be more masculine than they have been feminine. Meaning that when you carry the load, ladies, or had to carry the load, or be more responsible than you had to, you basically have had to carry the irresponsibilities of your mothers or generational things and so forth that they did not unpack. So that made you, now that you've carried your load physically, has exhausted you spiritually, emotionally, mentally. So now you're seeking out, due to a system, you see women seeking out now a companion after, maybe having one or two kids and so forth, or even more. So now this system that's crumbling, y'all don't realize it's collapsing to rebuild what was once which were women who unified and came together. But when you don't have that within the matriarchal structure first, you can't expect this shit to be in the patriarchal lens, meaning the vision of men. Most men do not have a vision of unifying. Why do you think a lot of these people who spoke in certain aspects, who were trying to unify, they were taken out? Why do you think that? Because they knew that a whole structure, economic system and everything would be rebuilt upon women who can liberate and be in their sovereignty and can be authentic. This is why certain voices come along that hold a frequency that not so much awaken the masses, but has an effect to where it will live on generationally and leave behind something that will echo in generations. That's the beauty of this. So again, what a lot of men don't realize, because it's holding everyone accountable, I see women who go through cycles where they're going to the next man, but not realize you're collecting more karma. Just like a man that don't care about where he plant his seed, and then you having kids by multiple women, and he don't care and she don't care, then you have a woman who not willing to heal and acknowledge, and going from man to man, and not willing to heal what is constantly put in her face to that her mother did, because you'll see certain behavior patterns or learned behavior patterns similarly to whether a mother or a great-grandmother and so forth. So again, you have women again carrying the load, not having no support, no community, and you've seen it play out. I've seen it in the shelter experience. I've seen it in women to where I had to sit back and have grace, because I was like, whoa, do she know? Maybe she doesn't. Do he know? Maybe he doesn't. That's why I emphasize so much about y'all taking care of y'allself, being responsible for you. Start somewhere. It's not going to happen overnight. Okay, this is going to get deeper though. So I willingly gave to women, overextending myself emotionally, sexually, physically, without any hesitation. Self-sacrificing my childhood innocence, dignity, respect, morals for emptiness. Meaning that women or relationships that were empty. Because if they didn't know a part of, or get to know a part of themselves, they would never know the depths of how our inner childs can explore, have fun together. That's why a lot of combative or relationships, I realized they were young into adulthood, when it's so solely focused on materialism, they don't know how to have fun together. They may not know how to get drunk and party, and she may be in it because for sexual reasons, but guess what? They don't know how to have fun. Their inner child don't know how to mesh, because when you have unresolved things, you don't know how to have fun amongst each other. You got people coming from generations where their mother and them never had the opportunity to go to a playground to have fun. I ain't mean just a playground. I'm talking about just the fact of to do stuff that literally ignites joy. What's the word? Initiate, not, what is it? Ignite, yeah, joy, sparks joy. So again, just gonna get deeper because I gotta get out of here. self-sacrifice of my innocence, childhood innocence, dignity, respect, and morals for emptiness. The traumatizing experience of watching and listening to my childhood shows. Reading Rainbow. For those of you who know Reading Rainbow, it's deep. Look it up. Reading Rainbow. One of my favorite TV shows being interrupted with sounds of what I know to be now, or know to be sex. Sex being a theme song during most of my shows. The hard knocking. The bed thumping against the wall. Heavy breathing. The smell was interesting. And I mean between my mother and the guy she was with. Waiting at the door afterwards. Asking, this is as a child, asking my mom, is she okay after because I wasn't sure if she was getting beaten from the dialogue being expressed while having sex. And I mean aggressive dialogue towards each other. Just as any kid would be curious to know, every time I hear these familiar sounds, using my imagination and placing my ear to the wall to listen. The haunting sounds of hearing my mama moan repeatedly. Like I said, this can be very vivid. If it's too much for you, I get it. But I know a lot of people can relate to this because it talks about how being exposed to things so young could lead to certain things, unhealthy attachments or addictions. As I proceed, being exposed so young to sexual noises may be something that followed me for years until it dawned on me, curious about how and why I did that. Sound lingering so long into my adulthood until I first heard another woman similar on corn. That's where my addiction started. Not to mention fighting, crying, screaming, arguments ending in bloodshed, police sirens that created even more confusion around how and what a healthy sexual experience is supposed to be. Now, when I say we grew up in an over-sexualized society, it's because sex has been something that's sacred. And being that it's not naturally seen as something healthy. So when you have little girls that grow into adulthood who never got to experience a healthy experience with that, an authentic experience, then you see an over-sexualized society. You see them take that into making money, showing their bodies, and that's all they know. And I'm not here to attack no woman or anybody, because to each their own. If that's how they want to express themselves, that's how they want to accumulate their wealth or finances, that's their life. I'm diving more deep into how sexual experiences can expose unwanted, or sexual experience or traumas can expose one into that said realm of things, and so forth. So let's just be honest, ladies. I'm talking to you. Due to pride, we all enable unconsciously or intentionally. Shit, I'll be the first to say men are afraid to say that they've been molested. Most of men today experiences with and how we were exposed to sex wasn't at all a unicorn magical adventure. It was more than traumatizing. It was brutal, heartbreaking, dealings with relentless abusers, some never stopping. And what I mean by that, a lot of people can relate, knowing that you've had people who were being stalked. You have people who repeatedly treated like these kids, abused them, and so forth. And even having relatives or people hide it and protect the predator for years. So-called guardians, parents who could care less to protect the future generations from severe emotional turmoil, internal wounds never acknowledged. So these are people who live with it, and to this day. These now men who hide behind career status and materialism were at the mercies of unavailable emotional, spiritual, and mental people who were disassociated with reality. And a lot of people who are disassociated were probably hurt, most likely, or they never were guided to acknowledge it. So this is a spiritual warfare. that happens within the lineage. Some of these abusers were even hurt or harmed sexually prior to the moment of men who fell prey at the hands of their abusers. Intergenerational trauma stored at the core of the foundations being built or having been created today. So a lot of these things, a lot of y'all don't know. Even when like I was in the fashion industry, there's so much over sexualized stuff. There's so many people who will that y'all don't know about, whether fashion and all these industries. When you hear people talk about like people wanting to like, I'm gonna use the term siphon, but wanting to drain you, wanting to like almost like on the spiritual aspect, like knowing who you are, knowing not even, I don't like the word potential, but knowing the power that you can bring. And when I would say this too, like for a lot of you women who are spiritualists or very powerful, whether you have gifts in music, arts, and writings or whatever it is, a lot of you are so powerful that you don't even realize like it's so magnetic to where you have to be so discerning. And a lot of you didn't have that protection. And a lot of you are in certain areas like rural areas. It can be trenches, wherever it is around the world. A lot of you have these innate gifts naturally that's ancestral, that you've had people monitor you most of your life. When I say spiritual warfare goes so deep to where you're coming into this life was almost like predestined to where it was orchestrated for you to be infiltrated so that you wouldn't like, so that you would end up in the industry. I talk to everybody, like some of you, if you want to call yourself celebrity, it's the same for you. Some of you were targeted. And some of you had to go just to come to this awareness, but some of you were personally targeted. And I'm called to say, like, my email, if you are having to get more insight, you can email me and reach out. But this goes for a lot. I'm speaking on the women first. A lot of you were targeted because of your essence, because of your gift. It's like your waters, and what I mean by waters, your emotional waters, your spiritual, your waters being like your womb space. Like you were targeted by practitioners, you were targeted purposely by people, whether industry, whatever. I'm talking about from a child. A lot of you were targeted, or there's been a lens on you since you were very young. And it doesn't matter how far you've been into certain things, you always can clear the waters. And that's from, I'm picking up on like children of Yemoja, Mami Wata, those of you that associate yourself with the Orishas. You can always clear your waters. And what this entails has a lot to do with, when I'm speaking about things generationally, that's how I see a lot of our women right now. Is that when I see the behaviors of like your daughters and so forth, when I see things happen, I see a lot of things that I recognize, like the Divine Mother sees you, but a lot of you haven't seen men or have men come along to see you spiritually and realize how tainted your waters have been. And when I say waters, I mean like the emotional resonance of your spiritual warfare that you went through, the hardship your mother went through and so forth in the womb, and then externally to be so much of a target, black sheep, outcasted, very young, and not knowing how and why it is you were experiencing so much of these gang stalking. It's so much that goes into it, but it has a lot to do with, when I say you're here to clear the waters, and for a lot of you, it's not about being perfect. It's about clearing the not just the air, but your womb space to finally rest again, to finally be restored with purity to finally, and I'm not talking about no nun, like it's not going to look a certain way. Like I said, your expression has a lot to do with ancestral. Your expression and your authenticity, your clearing of waters is having a lot to do with purification, cleansing, your emotional waters. Meaning that the things that were tainted when you were younger as a little girl, and what you were bought into, or even the illusion of sold into, or the illusion that you were given to be at whatever status that you are today. And a lot of you don't realize, like, your spiritual ranking was much more important than your earthly status that you gained here. And a lot of you were tricked into believing that you are supposed to manipulate or be manipulated through what you're doing for money and also for a position. And I'm talking about on all levels of like corporate and so forth, due to the distorted masculinity and femininity. Because as these templates, as the foundation, when I say templates, like these foundation crumble, you will realize how the intergenerational trauma has stopped with you. And what I mean by that, like the exhaustion of you emotionally, mentally, spiritually, is for you to finally recognize the generational traumas only assigned for you to clear karmically, so that your daughters, so that your kids, I'm telling you, as I be talking about this shit, I be picking up on people, what y'all call celebrities in the world. I be picking up on the energies of people who I know who watch, because when you just a messenger, you just deliver the message. It's not about being accepted. Some people can feel uncomfortable. Some people will reject it. It's fine. That's not my control. But again, the beauty of the bigger picture, those who can relate, knowing that when Big Mama and Mama coming back to get her kids, this is going for all those women who were also in position to spread a message to those younger girls, so that they don't continue a loop of mistreatment, self-sabotaging, self-disrespect or self-harming and so forth. Y'all gotta realize that just as accountable these women are, men are, there are women of certain status. I don't give a fuck where they at in the world. I don't care how much money they have. They too are accountable. It's just as much as a mother in a community who has food stamps. They too are just as accountable. Let y'all know, they too are just like me. Can be in a community or anywhere, has just as much accountability to the youth as just as anybody else who can say they're a billionaire. They have just as much as accountability. And that's what y'all need to realize. Like, bro, pay attention to who. Not even just saying what and doing what. What are they not doing? Should empower you even more to do what you need to do, and how you need to be a bridge for these kids. Because guess what? And no one can just stop the divine. No one can stop the divine order. This shit is just gonna continue to flow. I didn't even realize I'm about like 2 hours in on this, but hey, it is what it is. I appreciate you all. I'm grateful. Y'all take care of yourself. Peace and blessings. Shalom.